Hi everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel where if you try hard enough you can be the next DECA GOAT. My name is Justin Staub and we are here for another interview series where we take a deep dive into all the things that you want to know to ace those DECA competitions. Today I'm excited to have with us Avery Green, who is a DECA competitor and just returned from a DECA state competition as a DECA judge in Georgia. He's going to share with you some of the tips that he's seen as a DECA, both as a DECA competitor and as a DECA judge, to let you know just what the judges expect to see from you in your role plays. So Avery, welcome, and I'm so glad that we could do this together.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're going to run through 5 questions and give the listeners, future DECA competitors, just some tips about what you saw as a judge. Let's start with the easy one of just what was your DECA experience like in high school, and what led you to want to be a DECA judge?
So when I was in high school, I grew up in Georgia. I've been here my whole life. And the only reason I took and started in DECA is because marketing sounded like a fun class. Sounded a lot easier than some of the other ones, to be honest. And through there, one of my advisors just knew I was engaged, understood it. It came like common sense. So he asked me to compete and write the innovation plan, which is a 5-page paper over a print shop that he had as his personal idea. And I went to state, and my first year, I didn't really know anyone. It was a lot of fun. I did not qualify for ICDC my first year. Then again, I came back sophomore year. I wanted to do role plays. At our school, we had a testing system where if you weren't one of the highest testers, you don't get to compete in a role play. They want you to go do plans where you don't have to test. I was right on that cusp. So I had the opportunity to do accounting applications, which is one of the most fun accounting role plays you can do, I guess. And I got 8th place. The top 7 in our state qualify for ICDC. And the next year I did even better on my test. And I said, I want to go. I still want to do accounting applications, even though it's probably one of the most challenging role plays in my opinion. So in that competition, I did get the opportunity to qualify for ICDC, but I also did the virtual business event. And because I was able to network with some other people, and we had a great track record at our school, I was able to go compete in that at ICDC and be one of the top 16 people in the country.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. So what then led you to be a DECA judge for this first year experience?
I'm currently at Kennesaw State University, where we're a professional sales major. We do sales team, which is almost like DECA for college, where one morning we were introducing ourselves. Someone mentioned they did DECA, and one of my professors said, "Oh, I judged that at state. That was a lot of fun to judge." I said, "Well, why not? Let's go try it out." I reached out to our head person in Georgia and made sure I was qualified to do it. So I had to be out of school for at least 3 years. They needed the judges. I decided, let's go down one Friday and have some fun. So it was a great opportunity to give back.
It is, and it's a lot of fun. And as a DECA advisor who's been out of this long enough, or at this long enough now, it's fun to see returning students come back and help out run those conferences, because it takes a lot of effort to lift to get everybody there. So thanks for doing that. That's incredible. Next couple questions are about your experiences as a DECA judge. So let's start off with, you got to see, so we can tell people what the event was that you got to judge, but we're not going to talk specifics about the event. You got to do a retail merchandising role play and see those role plays. What were some of the top things that you saw stand out from the top performers that really set those top role plays out from maybe the average or the below average role plays? What makes the top performer stand out?
That really stood out was, first off, their confidence. They started off when they said go, we couldn't shake hands, but they sat down, they were ready to go, started talking, versus some of the other ones who waited for me to start it. And I enjoyed when they set out an agenda, so they were able to mention all the KPIs, the key performance indicators, at least one time, so I knew what they were going to talk about. And then I enjoyed the most is when they were able to make almost a small presentation that just said the KPI on the sheet. So as a judge, when I'm watching 20 plus role plays, I was able to follow along, even though I was doing it for 6+ hours. and know what they're hitting on and focus on that. And even if you don't make those because you don't have time or you can't have great handwriting, at least saying the key performance indicator was one of the best things you could do. It kept me focused on what we were hitting on that time so I could give you a better score. And then overall is at the very end, close it out like a business meeting. You're going to set that next meeting. You're going to follow up, say anything from, it was great getting to know you, or let's follow up. I'll set up an appointment with whatever name you want to use, your admin, for next week, and I can share whatever we talk about in this slide in more detail. How's that sound?
They always say to me, should I say the KPI? Should I use those words exactly? I'm like, yes. You just said you judged for 6 hours, and it's hard unless the kids actually sometimes explicitly say, or you said even, like, write them down and like follow along. Kids, it's okay to be explicit when you're going through your role plays because the judge wants to hear those things. They don't want to have it hidden and have to parse through what you're trying to say. So use the KPI wording exactly in your role plays. That's a great piece of advice. So question number 3 is just, was there anything that really caught your eye as creative or that was unique, even among the top performers? You said, wow, like, gosh, I wish everyone knew if they could include this sort of thing in their role play. That would be really awesome to see.
So there were a few key things that really stood out at my top of the top was they like to do what, when I was in high school, we called DECA, the KPI, which is define it, explain it, clarify it, and apply it. So everyone, for the most part, hit on what the KPIs were and gave their explanations somewhat. Mm-hmm. But for those who said their KPI, explained it, and then really applied it to the case. So this is how we're going to make you more successful. This is how we're going to do whatever the goals are for the organization. Shows they read it and they know what that's going to do in real life. And even if you're not totally sure about something, if it sounds professional, we don't know if it's true or not. I had some students give me statistics where I may not have been supposed to do it, but I asked at the end, hey, not for your score or anything, but was that true or did you just make that up? Because it was a great statistic. And they said, I was like, awesome, I appreciate it. Some of the students made graphs or charts, and when they were applicable and realistic, if you're going to apply something, your sales aren't just going to immediately go up in a straight exponential line. We'd love it if they could, but that's just not realistic. But overall, I think that was huge. And just being able to make little things up, as long as they're not too big of informations, but they still apply to the case.
So you've gotten to see a couple dozen role plays. Are there any tips that you would say to a competitor to just honestly flat out avoid these things or try to not do these things because, you know, it really shows that you're green or it really shows that you're not experienced? Are there any tips that you would suggest to students to just flat out avoid?
One of the biggest things that I would recommend avoiding was over apologizing. I had a student come in, they were extremely nervous and they kept apologizing. I counted it was at least 5 times throughout the role play. And because I've been in their shoes, I know what it's like. So it's okay, just take that breath. It's fine. Did she score as high as others? Not necessarily. But I also noticed a lot of those who weren't as strong of competitors did not go as far. And either because they didn't know what to do, and we had something that I personally had to Google beforehand, because it just wasn't terminology I'm used to. But when you Google it, it makes perfect sense in layman's terms of, oh, I know exactly what that is. Sometimes that is. And if you don't know exactly what you're doing, it's better, in my opinion, better to guess and try explaining it like you know what you're talking about than to not say anything at all.
Right. Did you come across any kids that it was very obvious they didn't really address a KPI at all? Like just either they forgot it or they just didn't want to do it?
So for one of the students I was judging, they went through a role play extremely fast, as in I was shocked they were done. And at the end I asked, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to add at all? And they said no, and they were done within 3 minutes. So it's not that necessarily they didn't want to talk about it or they forgot about it. I think they just were so nervous.
Absolutely. So the question I wanted to ask you was, you had said that some kids made those graphs, and like if a kid did it and it was exponential, uh, that's you have to make them at least as realistic as you can. So I know that some kids are instructed to either make a graph or in my state, kids love making business cards like to hand out. And I've said to kids, if you hand a business card to your boss, that's the wrong thing to do. So you don't want to do that. If you make a chart for something that doesn't need a chart, one of my kids at the district level, when they got their role plays back, she had made a chart of an economics concept that was like 100% ridiculously wrong. Were there any? First off, did you receive handouts from any of your competitors? And were there any of them that you were like, well, I don't even know why they handed me this. Like, this doesn't really apply.
Some of my students, when I was judging, made example social media posts to show what their campaign was going to do and look like. Some of them did give me a business card. In this case, they weren't necessarily required to do it. And I appreciated the thought, but I just wrote. I didn't count them off because I knew exactly what they were trying to do. Boss, you don't necessarily need your card. On Outlook, I can type in anyone in my company's email and I can get their email in a heartbeat.
It's neat to see that, though. It's clear that the instruction came from either a business teacher or an advisor about, like, hey, let's do these things. This will be creative. And for some kids, it doesn't connect why that's important. So they just do it anyway. And it's sort of neat to see, like, I understand what they're trying to do, but, you have to think about, if you have that time in your prep, think about how appropriate is that for the work that you're doing. Did your competitors compete masked? And if they did, was it hard to hear them?
We did all have to wear a mask. And personally, I know how challenging it is sometimes to keep them above your nose. So some of them, when they were talking, if it slid down, I wasn't going to judge them. I wasn't going to stop them in the middle of their role play and say they have their rhythm. But it definitely made it a little bit more challenging to hear. And I also had the opportunity to judge some of the franchise business plans. And after the first one, I told every single student that was coming in front of me, I know this sounds weird. Y'all need to come yell at me.
A recent video I just made was about like how you go through a written event presentation, and part of it was, look, folks, this year, I know a lot of kids like to stand up to give their written event presentations, but this year, if you're masked, I don't know if the kids realize how, even though they're not really loud, how loud those competition halls are. They're loud enough that if you're not clear and the mask is muffling your voice and you're standing up, you're now a couple feet from the judge, and that could get really hard. So I was just curious. I know that some states are or are not masked, and I know that in Pennsylvania we're going to be masked for our competitions. The kids need to. They need to project, and they need to be, I call it using your recess voice. You need to be able to shout, because otherwise it's not going to be heard, and you don't want a judge who's in the middle of a long day not hearing all your important things to say. That's really important to be clear.
We were not allowed to shake hands. A few students just reached out, said, don't worry about it. It happens. Grab a seat. I know I'm personally competing in collegiate competitions, role plays as well, and we shake each other's hands. So I understand the instinct, and it's just what happens. So if it happens, it happens. Try not to let it happen, but you're not going to instantly, at least in my experience, be disqualified or anything for it.
If you go back in time and talk to yourself as a competitor in your accounting applications or in your franchise business plan, is there anything that you would do differently as a DECA competitor, as a student going through DECA, that, like, if you could reach out and get to all the kids who are in DECA now, is there anything that you would do differently about your DECA experience?
The biggest thing I would do differently is take every opportunity that's awarded to you. My freshman year, even though I was not allotted or earning a spot at ICDC, I was given the opportunity to go. At the time, I thought it was because our advisors felt bad for me because of all the work I put in, but I didn't get to qualify. And this year they were running the state, and I mentioned it to them. They said, you worked harder than most of the kids who got to qualify. You deserve to go. So looking back, it's, oh, that would have been a great trip. That would have been a lot of fun. And the other thing looking back is this applies to real world. And even as an intern in companies and in the workforce, you can tell who has the presentation skills, even though it's not directly related. You can tell. I've been able to meet other interns who've done DECA, who have done some of these competitions, and they stand out when they're presenting to people. They know how to interact with others, and they're just overall better qualified. And the other thing I would really go back and do have a little bit more fun. Don't stress out as much. If you go to ICDC, it's absolutely fantastic. It's a lot of fun. But if you don't, help those who are going. It's not the end of your life. There's so much more to do. It's not going to make or break your entire life.
Avery, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your insight as a DECA judge. Thanks for spending the time with the Georgia students this weekend and getting to help them through that process and getting them to ICDC. And I look forward to continuing staying in touch with you as we go through this DECA journey together.
Yeah, thank you so much. Definitely look forward to being able to hopefully judge at ICDC and state in years to come.
Hey, if you get to judge at ICDC, reach out to me and I will make sure that, I don't know, I buy you a coffee somewhere along the way.
Yes, sir. I can definitely do that.